Hello. Today we are here with Jessica Shirey. She's an adoptee coming to us from Maryland. Um, she found us through searching for podcasts and the Primal Wound came up. So here we are. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for being
Hi.
here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Jessica. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too.
We had to
Okay.
kind of reschedule a couple times and then we were supposed to get together in Kansas City, which we will, but
We
so
will.
finally at least we're here on camera.
I'm going to come to Kansas City and then hopefully you'll be there and we can all meet.
Yeah, I'm there often now, so I'm sure we can make a time.
Yes. So let's launch in. Tell us your journey.
Okay, well, it's just so weird talking about myself. I feel like I talk to people all day long because I'm a teacher, but I was born in California in 1975. I was adopted at about 6 weeks of age. That's what I was told, by a couple who couldn't have their own children. And, it was just a pretty normal adoption. Nothing was ever held back from me as far as, telling me that I was adopted, but I didn't really have any other information, which never was a problem as a child, because I just wasn't really interested in knowing, of course, as a small child. And, as I grew up a little bit, by the time I was about 5, we moved from California to Pennsylvania. All of my grandparents were moving to Pennsylvania, so I guess we just moved with them. Like I said, it was never a secret that I was adopted. And
Did you have any siblings, like other adoptive siblings?
I did. A couple years later, my parents adopted a boy, and we are definitely the scientific experiment for nature versus nurture, because we are both adopted and we grew up in the same house, but the way that we turned out is totally different. So unfortunately, I just don't think that they were the best parents. They weren't very good at the adulting thing. So there was a lot of abuse in the household, not really against us, my brother and I, but my parents, my adoptive parents, they would fight all the time. There was a lot of kind of drug abuse in the household, but I don't really know if that's kind of like, it's the 70s, it's the 80s. Like there was a little bit of just being more free, but there was a lot of just yelling and abuse. And after a while, my mom was sick of it. And she asked me one day, she said, "Hey, do you want to go live with your grandma?" And I was like, "Sure, that would be great." So I remember as a child, my brother, her and I, we packing up and we went to live with my grandmother.
How old were you?
It was after second grade. So I don't,
Oh,
I just remember things by years of school, really.
Mhm.
After
so
second
that's kind of a secondary abandonment.
Yeah.
grade, yeah. So
I had that too, in a way. Yeah.
we went to live with my grandmother for 2 years in her house. And that was great because my grandmother and I lived upstairs and my brother and my mother lived downstairs. And I think that just speaks to kind of like the trajectory of how, our lives went. And after about
It's like a
2 years,
duplex or something.
it was a split level house. So it was a
Okay.
basement.
Oh, so your mom she went along. I was thinking
Right. So,
they
well,
were
my
just dropping you
mom,
off at your grandparents' type of thing.
no, she went. It was my mom, my adoptive brother, and I, and we went. But my adoptive mom and brother kind of lived downstairs in this split house, and my grandmother were upstairs. So that part of my childhood was really good. I mean, I was taken care of. I feel like I was well loved. So there was this little snippet of time that was kind of an oasis for me, like a relaxing part. And then after a while, I guess, I don't know if she was just tired of us living there because she was kind of a young, wild and free grandma, and she was living her life. So
Your grandma was, so how young were your parents when they adopted you?
they weren't that young. I think they were late 20s, early 30s. My grandmother, even though, I mean, she just always was full of life, and she was always trying to get out and volunteer and go dancing and whatever it was. She had a life. So I think she loved us, but she wanted us to be someplace else. So she bought us a house on the edge of town. And so my adoptive mother and brother and I, we moved into this house, which was fine. It was a nice countryside kind of area. There were some neighbors. And the house next door to us actually had a family with 3 children. And the funny thing that happened was by that time I'm in 4th and 5th grade, and I'm realizing that I'm probably more of an adult than my adoptive mother at this point. She just really struggled with alcoholism and, just depression. And I guess the saving grace for me was thinking, at least I'm not genetically related to these people. And I know that sounds horrible, but there was never really a connection with her or my father.
You had that in your head even then.
Yeah, even as a young
Mhm.
child.
So couple of questions. Well, first of all, like, how do addicts, make it through the social work
I was thinking this.
Yes, exactly.
visits to be it's just mind-boggling to me.
Mhm.
Number two, was your dad just out of the picture at this point, your adoptive dad?
No, we used to go visit him maybe twice a year. We would have to go visit him. He lived closer to Philadelphia. So for like a week in the summer or Christmas or something, I just remember going to visit him. I hated it. I remember crying. I would not eat. One time they wanted to take me to the doctor because I just refused to eat. It just was, and it wasn't anything horrible like when I would go to visit him, because when I went to visit him, he would be with his parents. And so both sets of adoptive grandparents were really wonderful people. It's just that their children were not very good parents. So it was never really a one kind of horrible experience, or there wasn't anything that stuck out that would make me not want to go visit him, except I just didn't really connect with any of these people.
Yeah.
Can't explain it any way other than that. And so it just got to be very stressful in the household. And I started to make friends, of course, with the people next door. And they had 3 kids and they just kept inviting me over for dinner. So I kept going. And after a while, I just ended up moving in with them.
Really? How
Yeah.
old were you when you moved in with them?
It was definitely a gradual thing. It was
Mhm.
not, a one-time thing, but over the years, I just spent more and more and more time with them. Those are the people that I considered my parents. I call them my Mr. Rogers parents because they're, won't you be my neighbor? And I feel like they just had 3 kids. So what's 4, So I just was with them all the time. Yeah, it turned out to be a really good situation for me. I had to be out of my house.
While
That
this was going on, what happened with your brother? Was he not coming over too?
He was a little bit involved, but he definitely was not as involved as myself, of course, because we all lived, side by side with the 2
Mhm.
houses. But he did not develop the same relationship, and his personality was a lot different. Like I said, it's just such a case
Yeah.
for nature versus nurture. Like he
Yeah.
got in trouble in school. He was horrible in school.
Yeah.
He got in trouble with the law. Like I was the model student. I was the, model child. Like
You were the good adoptee.
I
Yeah.
was the good one. So, people are going to want to take me with them on vacation and, just have me over to the house. So we just developed into 2 very different people. And
Yeah.
coming from the same household, I've always wondered that. And people have asked me, they're like, why is it that you developed this way and he went the other way? And I just don't know.
No.
Mm-mm.
I have a friend who went through a similar situation and lived with, she had 3 siblings and lived with the people next door, basically.
Yeah.
She would go at night and go to a room and everything upstairs.
Yeah. Yeah. So I basically just moved in and there were 2 girls and a boy, and they all had their own rooms. So the youngest daughter had a double bed. So then I just ended up being in the room with her, and I never left. So that's kind of where I started to, grow up, and I went to high school and then I went to college, and then, I graduated and got a job. I moved away.
Did your mom, were they still in the house next door? So you're just
They
like
were.
That's
living
what I was
this
like.
life while they were.
Right, which is kind of one of the wild things that happened. You would wonder why no one would have come over to get me. Like, where are
Mhm.
you? Like, why are you over here? But it just happened that way, that no one really asked where I went, or they never came looking for me, which was fine because I really knew I couldn't function in that house at all.
I'm thinking
Still
of
though,
adults
as
like,
a
yeah.
child, just that feeling of, I mean, I don't know, just not feeling
Disconnected.
safe or, yeah,
Mhm.
protected, not feeling protected by why did they adopt children?
I don't know, but they were not very good at it. They were not prepared. I don't think, and you're right. I don't know how anybody would have let them adopt children, let alone two.
That's what I was gonna say. Second
Given
one.
depression and substance abuse and other abuse. I mean, I guess that's not totally apparent, but I would think as a
Maybe they were
social worker
hiding.
placing children, you might have some ability to see through stuff, but maybe not. Maybe that
Yeah.
industry is just so huge.
So I just continued on with my life, and things were pretty good, and I got a job. You just never feel like you belong, though. Like I've heard a lot of your guests come on, and I have a lot of the same feelings that they did. Like you never look like anyone, or you don't have mannerisms like anyone. I never had like this desire to go find my birth family, I guess, because I really didn't have any negative feelings towards anyone giving me up. And I also thought, like, the people that you gave me to had enough issues. I don't need to go find somebody else that might have other issues.
Had you been told anything about them or the circumstances of your birth? Like there was any non-identifying information?
I had no information at all, and I was never
Wow.
given any information. Like I said, it was always open that I was adopted, but I had no information at all. It was the same old story of, oh, your parents wanted to take care of you, but they couldn't. Now we have you. And, that's a story for a child, but as you get older, you are curious. Like I was always curious because I didn't look like anybody at home. Like I'm not blonde hair, blue eyes. So I still wasn't looking like anyone. So they're always, trying to figure out what I was, like, what is your nationality? So one day, it was many, many years later, my Mr. Rogers' dad, he gave me that's what I call him.
I love it.
He gave me a DNA kit, an ancestry kit. And he said, well, we already know what we are. Like, we already have all of our family lineage and background, but we don't know about you. Ha, ha, ha. Like, here you go. Here, you go ahead and take it. We'll find out what you are. And it was just kind of, like a running family joke. Like, okay, we'll find out and we'll see. We're all curious. So I took it and I got it back. And I was really surprised by the results because everyone had assumed that I was Hispanic. They're like, you have to be Hispanic. You're from California, LA. Like, your mom has to be Hispanic. And it came out that I was Armenian, Iranian. And then the other half was, I guess, English, Irish. So it's a 50-50 split. So that was kind of, the talk of the town for a while because there's not much.
So this is obviously you were an adult. So because Ancestry only started these, 8 years ago or 9 years ago, something like that.
It was 5.5 years ago, I think, that I took the test.
And I like how you say your family because that's your family now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
so where did your adoptive mom, like what happened with all that? You go to college, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
You have kids, or like a lot of life happened. What happened from moving in with Mr. Rogers' family to getting your DNA kit?
So they lived in the house. My adoptive mom and brother lived in that house next door for a little while. And then eventually it was sold and, they moved away. I did not really keep in contact with them, of course.
Wow.
It wasn't a good scene for me. It was not healthy for me at all. And fortunately for me, I just feel like we kind of parted ways and that was it. And the Mr. Rogers family next door just became my family and life moved on.
Mr. Rogers' family is I like them because they're on the block. They're seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
We're just going to take this child as our own. I mean, that's pretty.
Come on in. You can have dinner. Like it just wasn't. Like I said,
they were clued in, you know what I mean? They're, being parents now, you can.
And as a teacher, if you have 3 kids, you might as well have 4. Like it's no deal.
It's exactly.
There's another spot in the car. Like, come on, there's another spot at the table. So I think it was just very natural for them just have an
Good
extra
people.
Did they help? Sorry if this is too personal. Did they pay for your college?
I got a scholarship to college. So most of it was paid for, but the paperwork and everything, I mean, they definitely helped with all that. I could never have figured, I could have.
Did they become your legal guardians?
They did not. They did
That's
not
interesting.
become my legal guardians because I think some of it was also financial in that as I got older, especially for college, like you qualify for more loans or more scholarships based on the fact that, my adoptive mother's income so I'm not really sure of all those technicalities, but no, it was never official, which is fine because I'm a lot, like, I feel like I have this really big personality at home. So, I feel loved. It's not a big deal. But when I took the test, like I said, I wasn't really searching for anything. And then I remember sitting at a Wegmans grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
and that was before COVID. So they had like a food bar. So I was there on a Friday night with my best friend, who's also a teacher, and we were grading papers and, on the computer. And all of a sudden I get this message, like, you have a close relative. And I thought, what does this mean? Because when you do the DNA kit, they're like, you have a 25th cousin and
Right.
Yeah.
it's just not really relevant, especially in a situation like mine. So it said you have a close relative, and I investigated a little further, and it said it could be your parent, sibling. They gave you like a list of things that it could be.
It was close. It was a close one.
It was very close. So I looked at my friend and I'm like, now what do I do? And she's like, she's always like, I don't know, it's whatever you want. Like, she's such a nice friend. So I said, I'm going to message this person. And it's so not like me, because I'm not a risk taker. I'm very safe and organized and responsible. So the fact that I even thought about sending a message to this person was just out of the ordinary for me. But I sent a message that night at the Wegmans grocery store in the little cafe. Hi. And I gave a little bit of information, like, I'm adopted. This is the year of my birth. Just a little bit. Do you know any information about me? And I really didn't expect a response at all. But almost immediately I got a response. And it was like, I wasn't living in California, but, a relative of mine was. Let me get back to you.
Ah.
So
so you hadn't yet figured out if this was a sibling or?
No, at this point I had no idea who it was. So then they actually got back to me and they said, oh, this is good news. My daughter is your mother.
Oh, a relative of mine.
And so I thought, oh, wow, now what do I do? Like,
This is your grandmother. You're
That's unusual.
Yes.
To have the grandmother be on,
Yeah.
It turned
also
out
just a generation that isn't super technical,
Right, is not techie.
Yeah.
It ended up being my grandfather.
Oh.
And so he said, would you like me to put you in contact with her? And I was like,
So he knew about the birth and everything? Had he?
It's kind of sketchy on who knew about me and for how long. And I think for a lot of the family, I was a big surprise. But for some people, I think they had an inkling. I think for some people they knew. And then it was 40 some years later, you just don't think about those things on a daily basis. And then you forget about them. So some people knew and some people didn't. But he was much older. So, maybe he just forgot or put it out of his mind. So he's like, I'll put you in touch with her. And he said, how do you want to proceed? And I said, well, here's my email. And so I sent the email, and I actually expected no response.
Mm-hmm.
No. And then she responded. And so then I was like, now what do I do? The whole story from here on out is like, now what do I do? Because it's just not.
That could be the name of a book you write. Now what do I do?
Now what do I do? So
you remind me so much of a friend of mine who, like, this would be her if this happened. She's adopted. It has not happened, but this would be her, like, it's all happening to me, but I'm not dealing.
I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
I'm not emotional. I'm not a hugger. Like, this is not, I feel like definitely after meeting my birth family, like, the people on the East Coast were a lot rougher and a lot less trustworthy than the people in the Midwest. Like, it's just strange. So I'm like, okay, fine. where are you guys? Like, and I was expecting California, and they said, no, we live in Kansas City.
There you go.
Kansas City. Who lives in Kansas City? Where is, like, I was like floored. I'm like, I did not.
This is your mother that's telling you this in an email, or grandpa?
The grandfather told me, but then when I was emailing my birth mother, she told me where she lived. She also lived in Kansas City. She was telling me about the family. There's a lot of them. She is the oldest child of 5, and she has 4 younger brothers. One of them, the youngest brother, and I are only 12 years apart. So my youngest uncle and I we're very close in age. So she was sending me some pictures, and I was sending her some pictures.
Was she young when she had you?
No, she was 23. And, she just said, like, I just couldn't do this on my own.
And she was out in California and
was, yes.
So she's not the Armenian Iranian part.
No. So that was
Your
another
father's Persian.
right. So when I went to meet them, I just looked at them like, I still don't look like anyone here. Like it was strange, but so we emailed for a while, and then she told me, I think I should tell you about your brother. And I was like, that's kind of an odd statement. So apparently I have 3 siblings, but one of them passed away when he was about 40, and he had a heart attack on my birthday, which is, it's just really weird. So the year that I met them on my birthday, my brother passes away, and then I meet them like 2 months later through an email, like the ancestry. So it's kind of like, is this meant to be? Like, what is going on? It was just really a strange set of circumstances to me.
Probably for her, she felt a little of that, losing
Yeah.
a child and finding a child.
Yeah, it was just really strange for them. You know, they kept mentioning it. And then she said, you also have another brother and a sister. They're much younger. And then after a while, I was just like, I'm tired of emailing you.
She kept like all these kids.
All
Okay.
3.
All 3 of them, which I don't feel any bitterness towards. I mean, you go through life and things change. And I really believe that she thought she just could not take care of me on her own, which was fine. You know, I was all right with that. So we were
How much of a difference? So your brother was closer to you than she waited and had 2 more kids?
Yes. So
Sort
my
of, okay.
younger brother and sister are about 10 years younger than I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have a relationship with them?
I do. So the story continues. And now what do we do? So, you know, I'm a very outgoing person. So after emailing maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, this is ridiculous. Can I call you? So I talked to her on the phone for about 3 weeks, maybe like once a week I would call her. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to come visit you. And she was like, okay. So this all happened within like 4 or 5, 6 months. Because I was emailing from like March, April, I was calling, you know, May, June, and by July, I was in Kansas City. So it was a very short amount of time between when I met them to when I actually met them in person. So I decided to go to Kansas City by myself. I decided not to tell my family at all where I was going.
Like your kids and
I did not tell my Pennsylvania people where I was going at all.
Oh,
Nobody.
My Mr. Rogers family, I did not tell them where I was going. I didn't tell them I met anyone. They had no idea that this process was going on. And I think that I just kept it a secret because we don't really keep secrets in our family. But I needed it to be my own, and I needed it to be something that if it went south, I didn't.
I was going to say that you're putting up the back door exit of it.
Yes. So if it went south, I did not want to, you know, I didn't want to talk about that because they would have said, well, you shouldn't have gone. And, you know, why did you do that? Or I didn't want any kind of judgment or any backlash from it. So I decided to go to Kansas City for a week in July, of course, because I'm, you know, a teacher on vacation. And I told my best friend and some of my other teacher friends where I was going, and they were tracking me on my phone, and I had to check in, and they're like, we don't know who these people are. And we're worried, and we don't know if you should go. And I'm like, I need to go. I'm just gonna, I have a good vibe. And if I usually get a good vibe about people, it's okay. So I don't know why I decided to go for a whole week, but I did. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so they were very open. They were like, oh, you can stay with us. And I'm thinking, what kind of Midwest, like, hospitality is this?
it's so like that here.
Yeah. Like, you all don't even know me. Like, I'm a stranger to you. And I'm like, no, I'll stay in a hotel. And it was fine. I remember going to my birth mother's house, and it was just very anticlimactic. It was like, hi, how are you? And I can't even remember if she gave me a hug, or probably because they're big huggers.
Had she been hoping you would find her, or?
I think so. I mean,
had she kept up with, you know, there's national registries that you can, that birth parents can put their names into. Alma, I guess is what it's called. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that she wasn't techie enough for that, or, you know, she was just busy with her life. I don't think she knew about that. But she would tell me cute stories like, oh, I used to light a candle on a cupcake every year for your birthday. And so I know that, you know, she was thoughtful about me, but I don't know if she actively searched out for me, but neither did I, you know, in a way. And not for any bad reason.
Did her children, the brother that you have that passed away, did he know about you?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think my sister did, but I don't think anybody else. I know my other brother did not. And it was a big shock to some people.
I'm sure. We
And
have a sister.
You're right. Like, who is this person? And they're very sweet. They call me the Found Sister, which is such a cute little nickname. But I went to meet them, and I remember just being at her house. And then my brother has children, so my nieces came over. And the first thing they tell me is like, well, can they call you Aunt Jessica? And I'm like, I'm a stranger. Like, you don't even know me. So it was just very inviting and very comfortable. And during the week, we just did activities to hang out and, get to know each other. And every day I would hang out for a while. And then between like 4 and 6, I would go back to the hotel and then call my best friend and
decompress
and like tell her everything about what happened. And then I would go back for dinner and hang out. One day we had a huge party at my grandfather's house, and everybody came over, and you would think it would have been stressful, like a fishbowl, like everyone's just staring at me. But it wasn't. It was very comfortable because they're just so nice, and they spoiled me rotten. They still do to this day, which is just so nice.
My biological family, if they're listening on my mom's side, are very like that. You just go in the room and just, you're welcome. If I brought 10 people with me, they'd all be welcome, and just sit down and eat, and just, you just feel loved.
Yeah, it was just very welcoming and, casual and comfortable. And so, you got to the end of the week and you're like, now what do I do? Because I knew at that point that I was coming back. So
what did you find out about your birth and your birth father?
Yeah, your birth father.
Well, I kind of hit her really hard. I hit my birth mom really hard. I think it was like the first day that I met her. We were at her house, and then she and I both left by ourselves to go for lunch. And I just remember bombarding her with questions, and she was kind of elusive about certain things. And I feel like I was very rough at the beginning with a lot of questions, and I kind of backed off, because you're really asking someone to tell you like some of the worst parts about their life or some difficult parts about their life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not always like open to that or ready to talk about everything. So
I thought about this recently, like you come into it, you weren't investigating that much or anything, but you come into it, you want the answers all of a sudden, like, oh, this is my life. And they're like, this is the worst part of my life. I've been thinking about that. Mm-hmm.
And you just, I kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a lot, because I wanted some answers. And after a while, she was just like, well, he couldn't stay. He moved out of town for work, and I was just kind of left by myself. And so I just took it at that. And sometimes we revisit some of the details, but most of the time we just don't. We just move on from where we are now.
Oh, so you still don't have the answers to him, or
no?
Do you have his name? Did she give you his name?
No, she did not.
So he's not on Ancestry, obviously.
I have investigated some of the other DNA sites, and I have a lot of other information, enough, I think, that if I wanted to go further and find out who exactly he was, I could. But I just feel like I'm very satisfied with what I have so far right now. So I'm just kind of leaving it alone for now.
I understand.
But I decided at the end, I was like, oh, I'm going to come back. And that was kind of stressful. Like, oh no, now what do I do with these people? And then how do I go home and tell my Mr. Rogers neighbor family what I've done? Because there are really no secrets at home. So I went home and I had to tell them where I was and what I had done. And they were like, oh my goodness, what? And I know that I was the talk of the town for like the biggest news east of the Mississippi in the last 20 years. Like, it was big time. And
were they supportive about it?
They were, but I think they were still hesitant. Like,
cautious.
We don't know these people, why would you want to do that? Almost like, aren't you satisfied with us? And, do we love you enough?
It's kind of funny because they're not even your adopted parents.
Yes, it's fun. And
they love you,
but they play out the narrative of the hurt adoptive parents. Why do you need to go look? You have us.
They play it out so well, and I feel like when I came back from that, they have been more overly protective of me than they ever had before, which is, a beautiful thing. You feel very loved. But they're a little bit more open to it. This spring, I took my oldest nephew on a trip And I took him to Kansas City and I had him meet people. So that was nice. So he's been out there. About 4 months after I met my birth mother, she actually flew to Maryland to meet my family. That was so stressful. I'm sure it was double stressful for her. But they came and they met her and it was nice. And I mean, everyone's going to be nice. I don't really know what anyone's true feelings are because I feel like both sides have behaved themselves. But whatever feelings they have, it's turned out and it's actually been a great journey.
They're not projecting them on you.
Yeah, which is nice.
So no contact at all with your adoptive family, your adoptive brother, your parents. Do you know where they are?
Well, since then, both of my adoptive parents have passed away.
Oh,
but I don't keep in contact with my adoptive brother at all, unfortunately. And I just feel like I just can't emotionally deal with him.
Yeah.
I know that sounds horrible. Like I don't want to talk to you, but we don't have the same lifestyle and I just don't feel like we'd have anything in common. So I
feel
I mean,
for
yeah,
him.
you're just two,
Separate
know,
kids.
random stranger babies placed into this
To be brother and sister.
to where you're not genetically related to. It's just like misfits placed in it's very odd. I still think about that concept
Yeah.
of you take a baby and just place them in a family where they have nothing to connect them. It's just
Kind
such a
of like
bizarre concept to me still.
Yeah. And yet, have you seen the movie Matilda? It's kind of like that. That's how I felt, where she just didn't fit in with her family and she was just really good at school and she eventually moves in with the teacher. Like that's kind of how it was. But even with the Mr. Rogers family, I mean, they have certain things that they like and don't like. And it's just, I don't like those same things. So when
because they're still genetically a family.
Right. Like if they make one more Jell-O salad, I'm like,
Right.
why Jell-O salad? Please don't.
Listen, you're not getting Jell-O salad in Kansas City. I mean,
You're not. And so when I went to Kansas City, it was just,
I'm surprised.
it was really interesting because they're not understanding either my fascination with our things that we have in common, like the facial expressions or the way you say things or how you look. You know, I can see myself in other people and definitely in their facial expressions. And for them, it's hard to understand, of course, because they've always been with each other their whole lives. But for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do this.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how many times I go back or how many times I see it, I'm still fascinated by it.
I'd really like you to, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with me, but I'd love for you to find your father's side. Only, you know, I have so many friends that are Persian and stuff. They're very into their children and lineage, and you might have a very rich history and siblings and a whole different thing too. That would be really neat to, you don't know, he might be really excited.
He might be. I mean, I haven't discounted it at all. I just feel like I'm kind of busy with one side right now.
Of course.
And like I said, I see them often and I have a great relationship with them. You know, when I'm in the room with my brother or, you know, my uncle, I've never felt so comfortable being in a room before. You just sit there and you're like, oh, these are my people. And you can't explain it to people.
Yeah,
I have this too. I haven't delved down that road either, but you know, I always think we have the limit of time, right? Because we don't know how old he is. And that's always my thing. Like if you're curious, don't wait too long just because of people age, obviously. Yeah.
Well, you do what you can when you're ready.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I have nothing to say. I have the same.
One step at a time.
Yeah. I'm doing it too.
Journey and you know, it'll evolve as it goes, but it's been a really positive experience. And I do recognize that other people don't have this positive experience. I don't take that for granted at all. But for right now, I'm gonna take it and use it up because it's been great.
I'm so glad. This is a nice, really
nice
story. And I'm glad that you come to Kansas City so often so that eventually we can meet.
Yes. And
I know I want Sarah to meet them. I want
yeah, you'll have to come by. I'm not far.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's not. Kansas City is not huge. And especially coming from LA, it's like
small.
People here complain about traffic. What?
Yeah, you
Like,
all
have
don't
you
have
seen?
traffic.
No.
No, there's no traffic here.
DC has traffic, not Kansas City. So
No. So much. So nice to meet you. And I'm so glad you came on. And
Me
please
too.
just keep us posted if the journey continues.
I definitely will. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Yes.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.